In the Huddle was created to give student athletes, parents, and coaches an inside look at the journey through US college sport and all that comes with it. The demands, the experiences, the excitement, and the opportunities available to our student athletes from around the world. Study and Play USA facilitates a comprehensive, customised approach for student athletes and families for their whole journey, from their high school preparation years right through to US college graduation.
Welcome, Mackayla Denney. We are here with Mackayla Denney, a softball player, and we'd love to hear a bit of your background, Mackayla. I have the pleasure of interviewing Mackayla all the way from Illinois. She's currently in America right now, but I would love for our audience if Mackayla could give a bit of background about who she is and where she's come from.
Hi, my name is obviously Mackayla. I'm from Port Hedland, Western Australia, but I moved to Perth back in 2018. I am over in the US playing softball at Lakeland College in Mattoon, Illinois, so central Illinois, about 3 hours away from Chicago. Very cold. A little bit about me. I started playing softball back when I was about 12 with my mom. Played state for Western Australia, and then I made the Australian team, the under 18s national team, to travel. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we could not travel, which was very disappointing. Decided that in grade 11, I wanted to go to college, which was pretty late considering like how early some people decide that they want to go to college. It's probably one thing I wish I changed. I wish I had like decided a little bit earlier. It would have made the process a little bit easier, not so rushed, I think. But yeah, I spoke to quite a few schools around the US and then settled on Lakeland, which is a junior college. But yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I wanted to unpack quickly the bit where you said that you wish you had started earlier because other people start earlier. So as you know from being there, college is at the forefront of everyone's mind in America as early as grade 8, grade 7.
Yes.
Everyone's thinking about it. You're thinking about a bunch of different stuff. So can you talk a little bit about people that you now are friends with in the US and kind of helping Aussies to understand the recruiting timeline?
Yes, absolutely. So I think like a prime example is my roommate, Bella. She, college has been in her parents' mind, I would say, like probably since the day she was born. Like they were like, my daughter's going to college, whether that be for softball or not for softball. Like college, I think, is the American dream. Like you have to attend college to be successful. Mostly for sport, I would say like sport over here is definitely way more serious than I think it is in Australia. So kids and parents and families are deciding really early that their children are going to college. Like you said, around grade 8, like as soon as they're reaching middle school to high school, they're trying to figure out where they want to go to college or what they want to go to college for. I always knew I wanted to go to university. Like I wanted to get a degree. I wanted to be in healthcare. I wanted to be a nurse or a paramedic or a midwife. Like, so I always knew that I had to take that route, like the extra schooling, not just go to high school and then be done. It was probably once I made the Australian team and I went on a tour with a program called Inspire through the US, just looking at colleges and playing softball over here in the US. We played in LA and Hawaii, that I really decided that I thought college might be the route for me. So it was like the end of grade 10, start of grade 11 that I said to my parents, like, hey, like, I think this is definitely something I want to do. Like, I would love to go to the US and play softball. I think it would really help me achieve my dreams for softball, like a lot more than staying in Australia and playing softball would. So my parents were fully supportive. They're like, okay, but like, you got to understand this is going to be a long, hard road. And we had no idea where to start, like what to do. And then it was by complete fluke that we got like this email from Softball Western Australia saying that Study and Play were coming to Softball WA to do like a talk about how to go to college. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. So I went to their little seminar and then, decided like that's definitely the route for me. I wish I'd picked earlier though. Like I wish I had decided earlier and probably done the process with you guys through grade 9, 10, 11, 12, because everything was so rushed. You have to know what classes to take, what classes that don't really matter. Like, I was behind in a social science in year 11, so I had to do schooling through a school in America. And it wasn't hard, but it was just extra work that I had to do that I didn't think I would have to do. So, I think if I could go back and do the whole thing again, even my parents would agree we would have started earlier. It definitely would have helped, I think.
Yep. Okay. Because I do talk to parents and families here, and especially when we have booths at places, we have we go to 14 and under tournaments or 12 and under tournaments, and we have families across various different sports that go, oh, hi, we're just here to get some information. Our son or daughter is only 12. I'm like, oh, perfect. And their eyes kind of widen. They're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, the recruiting process is very different in the US than it is here. And a big thing that happens here in Australia is people start too late. And I don't go into the whole spiel about why it's too late, but do you want to tell people listening why the words like too late might come up in grade 12 or even for some people grade 11?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, like I said before, they're starting so early. So these kids, I mean, I think it was only 2 years ago now that the rule came out where NCAA schools couldn't talk to anyone under the age of 16. Before that, like, NCAA schools have been tracking these kids since they were like 12, 13 years old. So they already have a lot of interest. And then when we decide, like, at grade 11 or 12 that we want to go over there, teams are full. They've got everyone that they need for that year. They've given out all their scholarships. They can't give you what you need because they have decided already that their team is set and ready to go. So I think that's where I struggled a lot, is like, schools would be interested. They're like, oh, Mackayla, like, we love your work ethic, we love your ability, but like, I don't have anything for you. Like, you could come on as a walk-on. And that for me was a big no, because like, obviously flying all that way, you need help with scholarship money. Like, so that, I think that's a big thing. Like, schools they're already set with who they have on their team. And then another thing is like the amount of work you have to do. Like, obviously study and play, you guys help a lot with it, but getting your visa, making sure your passport's ready, like signing up with the school, getting your F1, your I-20, like all that stuff takes a lot more time than I think people think it does. Like, it took me like 3 months to get a visa appointment. And you're not even guaranteed to get a visa in that visa appointment. So stuff like that too is very stressful. But yeah, I think that's what I found the hardest, was schools they were like set with who they had. They didn't need anybody else, stuff like that.
And I think also I got a bit of a culture shock because I used to be a teacher. So me teaching, I was a primary school teacher, but had a lot of exposure to high school as well. And I actually am still to this day baffled at how intense high school is here in Australia for you guys. Regardless of what high school you go to, it's just really intense. And I did not feel that intensity with my peers in the US. I went to a high school and took advanced classes. Not all advanced, but I took a few advanced classes. So I had like a semi-rigorous course load, I would say. And I still did not feel probably nearly as much pressure as you guys do. So I think about that a lot.
Yeah, and like I totally agree with that, because coming over to the US, like I would get a lot of mixed like talk from people. Like, some people be like, oh, the schooling over there is so easy, like don't even worry about it, kind of thing. And then some people would be like, oh no, it's pretty tough. And I guess it all kind of depends on like what division you go, what program you're in, like what degree you're taking. Like I'm in a health degree. I want to be a paramedic, so that's a little bit tougher than my roommate who's taking business, kind of thing. So I think that all evens out as well. And then I definitely think high school is a very different mindset in the US. Like, high school is sport. I feel like it's sport. Like, whereas Australia is school. Like, we don't have high school sports. We don't have college sports like they do over here. Like, I mean, we do PE for 1 hour every day, but we don't play softball at school or like and that kind of stuff. So I think it's very different country to country, and I think that it's a big adjustment, I guess. I mean, I found school a lot easier over here, which has been really nice because then being that I'm not from America, I haven't spent my whole life trying to balance softball and school. Yeah. So coming over here and schooling being a little bit easier for me, I'm like, okay, that's a little bit, thank goodness kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's interesting that you said high school is like sport, because just to put things into perspective, in the American high school system, your club sport is different to high school. It's at different times. And so high school sport takes priority. So I've explained this to some people, and I could talk about this for hours, but my high school schedule was Monday to Saturday, usually 2.5 hours of training. So that's 6 days a week training, about 2.5 hours. Yes. We had physios that would tape us before sessions. We had nutritionists. We had all that kind of stuff. And then we had games during the week as well. So we'd leave school sometimes depending on where the game was, I think it was about twice a week, we would leave school at 1 or 12:30 to go play our games twice a week. So we were balancing schoolwork and sport very just naturally, I guess. And so again, when I moved here, I was like, there's not as much training. It's very focused on academics. So I do know that you guys are very well equipped to go over to the US and study and do really well at school. But I could talk about that for ages, but I do want to move on to something different. So when you started the process with us, you acknowledged that you wish you had started sooner. But when you did start, did you have any idea of what U.S. college sport would be like? And with your experience with Australian softball and American softball, can you talk a bit about that and also talk a bit about potentially even people listening that are not softball players? If you were to compare general Australian sport to general U.S. sport for college, could you talk a bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So this is probably one of my favorite topics, talking about the differences. I can't speak for every single sport, obviously, but I can definitely speak for softball and like it in general. It's way more serious over here. Like I thought before I came to America that I took softball seriously. Like I was like, oh yeah, like I'm in the state program, I'm in the national program. I want to go to the Olympics. Like, that's my goal. Like, I'm practicing 5 days a week. And then I got here and I was like, whoa, I don't take this sport seriously at all. Like, these girls have been playing since they were 8. Like, they have been playing every single weekend, traveling across the country, playing travel ball softball every weekend since they were 8. They practice every single day, twice a day. Like, it is just, it's so much more serious here. And that was a big adjustment for me because I thought being in the national team, I was like, oh, I'll come over here and I'll fit right in. Like it's not gonna be much different. It can't be much different. And then my first practice, I was like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? Why did I choose this? Because these girls, and it's not that they were athletically better than me. Like I was just as fit as they were. I could throw the ball just as hard as they could. But it was more that they just had so much more knowledge of the game. Like, they were 10 steps ahead of me. And I was just like, I just got very, frustrated and flustered about it, I guess, because I was like, I've been doing this since I was, 12. Why am I not so serious about this? But to put it in perspective, I would play one game a weekend throughout the summer or throughout the winter. That's probably, 20 to 25 games a year. And then if you add state, that's probably 30 games a year. These girls are playing 120 games a year. And that's a lot more games. So I think overall, just because of high school and knowing that kids want to go to college, they've always just taken sport a lot more seriously than what we do in Australia. And that's nothing against Australia at all. Australia is very academically driven, I believe. I think Australia sees that sport's only going to get you so far, and then your degree will get you the rest of the way. Your degree is what's going to earn you your money, unless you're very good and going to make it to the majors or stuff like that. and especially at the JUCO route, like a lot of these girls aren't going to play on after college, so it baffles me a little bit when they take softball so seriously in school not, because I'm like, whoa, you're gonna be finished with this soon, and then your degree takes over, and if you don't end with a degree, what are you gonna do, kind of thing.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah. I like the comparisons that you made between Australia and America. And I think it's important that you acknowledge, and that I try to acknowledge often, that it's not a knock on Australia at all.
Oh, no,
It's just,
definitely not.
Yeah, just different.
Yeah. I think after being here, I'm very grateful that I was born in Australia, and we did dedicate so much to education, because like, I'll be realistic too, like as a woman in sport, like I'm never gonna be able to live off of softball. Like, so the fact that Australia forced me to be really good at school and focus so much on school is definitely going to help me later in life. So
yes, maybe one day softball players will be able to live on their wage. Hopefully, like
I am hoping, definitely hoping.
Yeah, it's cool to see the tide changing a bit with women's sport in the U.S. and that's
100%.
a whole nother podcast
that I could talk forever about.
Yeah. But what I do want to kind of dive into a bit as well is, with people listening that are in the coach contact phase, whether they're working with a company like us or not, I think some people will receive interest from coaches and by human nature go, I am too good for this program. So I find this whole thing really interesting because in the US, you have the options of going to watch games at college. So I lived next to Cal and Stanford, which are obviously like amazing universities.
Yes.
So I got to watch various different sports with those two universities. So I grew up with all the merch, like cheering on, eating hot dogs, like loving going to all those games. And then we got recruited, like our club team, I say we because my twin and we got recruited for various different schools in the area. And instead of us going like, oh, we are too good, you can just quickly hop over, watch a game, and you can decide for yourself, do you think that you're able to compete at this level? And if you're not quite sure with that game, you can watch another game. Obviously, in Australia, you can't quite do that besides watching footage online. And this is for team sports. So it's a little bit different, as you would know, with swimming and track and things like that, because you have a time and that's your time, and you either qualify for a certain time or you're not quite where the coach needs you to be with a time. But then with sports like with your sport and with my sport of soccer as well, it's really hard to sometimes decide, are you too good for this program, or is this too much of a like settling, I guess, school? So what I wanted to kind of chat with you about is, what would you say to kids that are in the coach contact phase, receiving interest, going either consciously or subconsciously, oh, I'm too good for that school?
Yeah. So I don't, personally, I don't think I ever felt like that. And whether you do or not, like, that's completely fine, obviously. Like, there's definitely schools out there now that I've faced schools that I'm like, okay, like, I would probably stand out in that team, or this team I would not stand out in, like, stuff like that. I think, like, my biggest piece of advice in the coach contact phase is never disregard a school. Like, just because you think they might not be good enough for you doesn't mean you can't use those coaches and those students to make yourself better at asking questions or getting used to that coach contact phase. Like, there was a school I spoke to that I knew I was definitely not going to go to, but it was helpful to talk to that coach and kind of see his reaction to my questions and use him to understand like where I kind of sit for that level of softball or schooling wise. I definitely think you never should disregard a coach or a school, especially because like you won't understand until you come over here, but a lot of coaches know a lot of people. So like,
yeah.
And a lot of coaches talk too. Like, my coach will get a call from like a girl in Indiana, say, and he'll call like all those schools around where she's from and be like, hey, like, do you know this girl? And they'll be like, yeah, like, kind of thing. And so I think that's really important too. Like, even if you are 10,000 miles away or 15,000 kilometers away, like, coaches still talk too. So you never want to disrespect the program or anything. And I think if you do feel like that, don't ever be rude about it. Just be like, hey, like, thank you so much for the offer. However, I'm not like quite interested in what you have to offer. And coaches at that, if you're respectful about it, they're never going to take it to heart. Like, they're just going to go find somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think it works the same way with if you don't think you're good enough too. Like, don't disrespect the coach in that way too. I think take everything as a learning opportunity. Because like, I think that helped me too. Like, the very first school I spoke to, I was like, ooh, I didn't really click with the coach. And I was just like, this school's not for me. But I would never go to him and be like, you're not for me. Like, I kept the contact going, and like, I just used it to my advantage to help myself out. And like, I've spoken to my coach about that a lot, and he's like, no, of course, do that. Like, use everything you can to make your experience better and to help you find the perfect fit, because you want that. You want the perfect fit. And if you don't think it's the perfect fit for you, then definitely don't take it. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing to think you're too good for a school or too bad for a school. Like, you have to find a school that's perfect for you.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think some people listening might go, oh, the word use could have like a negative connotation. But Chris and I have talked about this a fair bit. And it's not using a coach with no benefit or anything like that. It's part of the recruiting process. And I think a lot of people in Australia might feel guilty about talking to a coach knowing that they're never going to go there. Absolutely. But I also think,
it was Chris that spoke to me about that. He's like, it's okay if you don't like that. It was Chris and Alexia. If it's okay if you don't like that school, like, just use them to your advantage. And they know that too. I mean, these coaches have been doing it for so long. They're not silly. And at the same point, they're probably using you a little bit too.
Yes,
like, yes. There's a leverage thing for coaches. They could be like, they're talking to one girl, but they're talking to another girl, and they could be like, well, this girl, she is really interesting, just to get you to sign, kind of thing. So it works both ways. Like, it definitely works both ways. It's not just a one-way thing.
And the other thing I think I would like to hear your thoughts on, now that you've been there, with programs with subjective sports, like I was saying, like softball and soccer and things like that, and baseball. With those sports, if someone is sitting here going, I'm too good for this, which again, I'm bringing that up again because I know that people believe this, whether like they say it out loud or not. I was curious to know, people that think that, where do they get that idea from? And the stuff that I'm not saying it as like a judgmental thing. I'm very curious. So you're looking at a program. Hypothetically, there's a student looking at a softball program. They've never been to the United States. They've never seen that school play unless they've looked up YouTube footage, maybe.
Yes.
They've never met with a coach. They've never met with any of the current players. They've never been to that city. They may have received accolades in Australia, but I'm curious to know, sometimes people will tell me and sometimes they won't, why they think they're too good for that program. And some people will say stuff like, oh, I've compared bios of current players on the team, and in Australia, I'm playing above that league if there's an Australian on that team. Or if there's a New Zealander on that team, oh, they didn't make that team. So, but I did, like the Oceania team or whatever, national team or something. So they're comparing directly to current people on the roster. And I actually had a conversation last week about this, someone comparing people on the roster. But then me saying, you're actually comparing to an American who has probably already, by this point, the coach has seen them play live 10, 11, 12 times by grade 11. So you're comparing the bio of someone that a coach has been watching for 2, 3, 4 years already.
Yes.
So just kind of keeping it real, I guess.
Yeah. No, definitely. So I think like for me on the decision making kind of thing, I took it back to if my club team or my state team could beat that team, I'm not interested. Only because I wanted a team that was going to push me to be better. Like my goals for softball are very high. Like I want to make the national team. I want to be in the Aussie Spirit team. I want to go to the Olympics with Australia. So if I could see that my club team, which is, it's a good team, but it's not a nationally ranked team, could beat this college team, I knew I wasn't going to get pushed enough. I knew there was not going to be enough competition for me to work hard enough to be on that field. But like I said before, it doesn't mean I disregarded that coach or his program, because they work so hard to do what they do. But I definitely understand that there is people, and like you said, it's not a bad thing if you think you're better. But I definitely understand that people are out there that think I'm better than this person. But you can never compare yourself to an American kid, like at all, I think, like, because they, like we've said before, they've been playing every day, every weekend since they were 8 years old. So they already are going to have an advantage on you. They're going to be more knowledgeable. And this is every school, I think. Like, they're going to be more knowledgeable of the game. They're going to understand how the college system works because they've watched college coaches. They're going to understand how college coaches coach, because this is their job. If they don't win, they get fired. So they're very serious. And in Australia, we've never experienced that. Like, I know definitely in softball, like if a coach is hard, it's just because he's hard, and it's nowhere near as hard as they are over here. Like, this is their life, I guess. So I don't think it's good to compare yourself to anybody that's on the team. Like, especially even if it is other Australian kids, because like they've already been there now too. You haven't been there yet. So you may have been better than them before, but that doesn't mean that you're better than them now. And they also have to remember too that if they didn't make that team, it's probably because they are in the United States. They haven't had the opportunity to be seen by these Australian coaches, or not, especially if they're not reaching out to them. So I guess like you never know how good somebody is unless you really go there. And like stats and records and bios can be very deceiving too.
Preach.
Yeah, very deceiving. Like, especially it all comes down, I think, like conference and stuff. Like every conference is very different. So just because a school in Texas isn't doing very well doesn't mean they can't kick our butt because we're in a different conference and our conference might not be as good, or vice versa. Like, just because a school in my conference isn't doing so good doesn't mean they can't kick that number one schools, but in Tennessee or Texas or Florida, because everything's different too. Like, it's so different state to state. It's so different country to country. So I think judging people or programs just based on stats and records and bios is very deceiving. Like, you never know. And it's hard being Australian because you don't get to just drive to a game and watch how that team goes. But I think definitely trying any chance you can to watch their games online. Like, a lot of schools live stream stuff, so to really understand where you think you might fit. And in the end, it's your decision, and don't let anybody take that away from you. If you think you're too good, then you're too good. And then if you go to a school that you think I'll fit in here and you're not good enough, then you just work hard, kind of thing.
Yes.
So, yeah,
that whole thing, I felt the whole time you were talking, I was like, say it louder for the people in the back, like, just
yeah.
Because I think as well, which this is a great segue to the next part of what I wanted to talk to you about, which is people that may potentially only have a few offers, just generally. So it might be less than 5, less than 10 offers. And they might think that they are too good for all of those offers. So you and I were talking off camera before about the fact that you and I have both seen Australians not go to college because they believe that they are better than their offers. And this is kind of a very direct statement and very direct question. And I think that it's important to acknowledge, because I think when people decide that they don't want to go because they're better, there might be some part somewhere of them that's like a bit embarrassed because they thought they would be ending up, quote unquote, higher than where they were. So I like to kind of talk about it as like a opportunity to just go over and dominate. So if you think you are too good for that program, go over, dominate, crush it, get all American, get all the different awards that you want to get from your hard work. And then you can pivot and go somewhere else after once you've proved yourself in the United States. So I think, yeah, some people are like, oh, I'm not going to go.
And I think as somebody who decided to take the college route, that's so heartbreaking. Like, it's so disappointing to me to hear that somebody chose to not follow their dream just because they're worried about what other people will think of them. And like, I'm not gonna lie, at first, like, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later on in the podcast, I wanted to go Division 1, and I thought, you know what, if I don't go Division 1, that's so embarrassing. People are going to think less of me. And then I sat back and I was like, I cannot let somebody else dictate the dream that I have. Like, whether it be my parents, because my parents were very set on Division 1, whether it be myself, whether it be my brothers, my family, my friends, like, it is my dream. It is my life. And whether you believe in whatever you believe in, you get one chance at it. And I think letting somebody else tell you or make you feel embarrassed for not going the route that they think you should go is very heartbreaking, because whether these last 2 years have been tough at times and I've wanted to go home, but like every college kid does, if I hadn't have chosen to come to college, I would have missed out on so much. I would have missed out on so many learning opportunities to grow, so many amazing experiences, amazing friends, like the ability to play the sport I love. So I think, like, if I definitely agree with you. If you think you're too good for a school, go to the school, dominate at the school, and then transfer to a great school, because as hard as study and play work or any agency work, the chances of you getting recruited to a really good school is so much easier if you live in America than if you live in Australia. And that's no like judgment to any agency that's trying to help you. It's just facts. Like, they get to watch you every day here. They get to know you. They get to talk to your other coaches. Like, you don't get that ability because you're so far away when you're in Australia.
Yeah.
So go to this school, do really well, or love it and stay. Like, you never know, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, my goal was to come to Lakeland, play 1 year really well, and transfer on. And I played well, but I loved it here. And I was like, no, why would I leave if I love it here? I mean, some days it's hard, yeah, and it's excruciating, but I mean, the good times outweigh the bad 100%. And I think, like, don't ever give up your dream because you're embarrassed to tell somebody that you went JUCO or NAIA or low Division 1. Like, any achievement as an Australian coming over here and working your butt off and being away from your parents is so much harder than a kid that drives 40 minutes away from home and goes to a Division 1 school, I think.
I love that whole thing, and I have nothing to add, but what I will say to the listeners is I have not trained Mackayla to say any of this. This is genuinely how Mackayla feels, and I'm sure you guys listening and watching will be able to tell that this is how you truly feel. And I think if we spoke to hundreds of kids that we've helped, they would say the same thing. Yeah. And I think the thing for listeners to remember is, if you're letting one person or group of people dictate how you feel about your decision, then they're kind of paralyzing you into potentially following your dreams. 100%. And maybe your dream is not one of the divisions that you were offered, but it's a step to the next place. Or like Mackayla said, you're just over the moon when you get there and you are super happy. So yeah, love everything that you just said about that, which is another great segue into what you originally thought in high school doing the recruiting process. This was before I started with the company, so I wasn't helping you then, but You said that you were very focused on Division 1 and your parents were as well. So can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, you turn on ESPN and who do you see? Like, you see Florida Gators, Texas, Stanford, Cal State, Fullerton, like all the big teams, all the big Division I teams. So when you think of college, you think of Division I, you think big team Division I schools. You don't hear about or see the Division II teams or the Division III teams or the NAIA teams or the JUCO teams. Like, you don't get to see that stuff. So I think there's a big stigma of, if I'm going to college, I'm going Division I, because anything else is embarrassing because nobody will know where I am. And I had that. I was like, oh, if I want to go play softball, I am going to a Division I school. And I was at the point, and my parents were at that point where we were like, we will risk money. We will risk anything so that my daughter can go Division I. And it was heartbreaking when I was like, well, I'm not getting any Division I interest. Like, I got a little bit here and there, but it was nothing like I thought. Like, I thought, oh, these schools are going to see that I'm in the Australian team. I'll be fine. The Australian team means nothing to people over here. They're like, we don't care. Like, if you're in the Australian team, like, oh, that's another achievement for you, but we're American. Like, we don't care about your Australian
with the accent
kind of thing. Yeah, like it's exciting for you and for them, because they know, like, oh, okay, well, she's the best in the country at that time, but it doesn't mean much to them. So I think, like, when I thought of college, I was like, I'm Division I, I'm Division I, I'm Division I, I'm Division I. And then Lexia and Ellen, who was here at the time, and Chris all sat me down, and they're like, look, Mac, like, I don't think you're really getting the interest that you're looking for. How about we look into other divisions, NAIA and JUCO? And at first I was like, no. Like, if I'm not doing this Division I, then I'm not doing this at all. And it was that same thing. I was worried that what people would think about me, or letting down my parents, and stuff like that. And then I really sat down and I was like, well, I looked into it a lot. I did a lot of my own research with my family and stuff. And a lot of athletes get picked up from JUCOs to go Division I and go Division I at good schools on good money. And I was not getting those offers. So I thought to myself, well, what's better? I can go Division I on not a lot of money, sit my first 2 years, not see the field, or I could go JUCO on money and play my first 2 years, and then potentially get a really good scholarship to a really good school and a Division I school. And that's my dream. Like, in the end, when somebody asks me, where'd you go to college? I can be like, I went Division I, or I went Division II, and I went high-end Division II, or I went NAIA. Like, in the end, who cares what people think? Because it's your dream and it's your life. It's not theirs. If they want to judge you, then you just tell them, well, why didn't you go Division I, kind of thing? Like, why didn't you choose to go to college? So I think, like, people really need to understand that going JUCO or going NAIA or going Division II and III is not a bad thing. If the school fits you, then it doesn't matter what other people think at all.
Yes.
And I am so grateful for Study and Play telling me to go JUCO, or not telling me to go JUCO, but suggesting the idea of going to JUCO, because I have met the two most amazing girls. Like, my two best friends are incredible, and I've had the most amazing experiences. I've played my freshman and sophomore year, which, like, a lot of other girls don't when they come from Australia and they go to big NCAA schools. And yeah, potentially I'm hoping to go on Division I. Whether I do or not, I won't know for another couple months. But I mean, I have more of a chance now than I did when I played in Australia. So
I think that's really, really full of wisdom, that whole entire thing, full of wisdom. Any sport, for any person listening, that is super, super important to hear. Parents, kids, 12-year-olds, 18-year-olds, doesn't matter. Really, really important for everyone to kind of let that sink in. And I think there is, similar to in the United States, you have people in the United States going through the recruiting process that have similar thoughts of like, oh, I just really, really want to go Division I because otherwise I'm a bit embarrassed.
Yes.
But yeah, it doesn't really matter what people think. And
No.
so right. So what advice would you have for softballers listening of things that you wish that you had done a bit differently in the recruiting process, maybe some tips for videos, maybe some things that if this was a year 9 softballer listening or a year 10 or 11, if they still have a while to film and still have a while to get better, what kind of stuff would you tell them to work on before heading over?
Take it more seriously. I think we think we take it seriously, and then we come over here, or I come over here and I'm like, oh, maybe I didn't take it seriously. I think even, and this is for all athletes too, get in the gym, do your cardio, do your lifting, because like I said, these kids have been doing it for so long, so we're already behind because we don't take it anywhere near as serious as they do. Some sports might, some sports in Australia, they take very seriously, like tennis, say, a lot of tennis players come over from Australia and they excel in the United States because it's a sport that we are pretty good at, swimming, that kind of stuff. But your sports that are predominantly US based, like softball and baseball and all those kind of things, we have to take it more seriously. I think you have to be a lot harder on yourself than you think you are. And then with video footage, I look back at my video footage now and I'm like, how did I ever get recruited? What did Coach Nelson see in me to think, yeah, I want that girl? Because I look at it and I'm like, whoa, that's embarrassing. I think we have to be a lot more aggressive too, especially in videos, especially for softball. I look back at my swing and it was kind of pathetic. And I'm like, oh, I wish I could have swung a little bit harder or went for that ball a little bit harder. Kind of stuff like that, I think, is the biggest thing. And then just taking every opportunity to get better. There's not a lot in Australia. We don't get to play a lot of games. So any chance you do get to play a game, take it way more seriously and be better. And video everything. I wish I'd videoed my games because I think intensity in games is a little bit higher than in practice too. Because you want to win. In practice, you're not competing against anybody. So I think a lot of practice game footage is really important too. I didn't really have a lot. Mine was more practice footage, and I think it would have helped if I had a lot more game footage.
Yeah. Okay. I like the comments you made about intensity in general. Yeah. I think there's a wide range of videos that we receive from kids who have various levels of intensity. And I also did want to ask your thoughts on if someone has been asked by a coach to provide more footage but doesn't, what are your thoughts on that?
They will soon not be interested in you. I mean, they're expecting you to give what they're giving. If they are taking the time out of their day to look at your footage and talk to you, then they're expecting you to take the time out of your day to get them the footage that they want. Otherwise, they're not going to be interested in you anymore. If you take too long, if you are disrespectful, they're not going to waste their time because they have 100 other options to choose from. I think if you are from Australia and you were talking to a coach, you are very fortunate because there is a lot of other kids that they can spend a lot less money on. They don't have to not waste an international scholarship, but they don't have to use an international scholarship and worry about everything that comes with an international athlete because there's a lot more than you may think. So they're just going to take their next option. If you are going to waste their time, they're not going to waste their time. They're not going to keep talking to you.
Yep.
So if a coach asks you to do something, do it straight away or as soon as you have time. Obviously I know school, work, practice and stuff, but you need to communicate that too. Hi coach, I'm really busy right now. I have a final or an exam coming up and I have practice. Can I get it to you within the next week? They're usually going to be like, yeah, absolutely. No worries. Thank you for communicating with me. But if you're waiting 2 weeks and then you respond, they're going to be like, no, sorry, we already filled that.
Yeah.
Don't waste the time.
I think what happens is because you guys, when I say you guys, Australian high school students are so busy with school, sometimes this pathway is second or third or fourth or fifth priority, which is understandable. I get that for sure. Yes. And I think that's a culture shock for me, but I've learned about that as now moving to Australia. But with other kids in America, they're going out of their way to provide that footage or provide those stats or provide footage of them doing things that a coach has maybe not even asked for, but they're like, oh, this shows this, so I'm going to go do this. And the coach hasn't asked for this, but I'm going to go and film this to show that I've decided to take one less step before going over the hurdle. And I'm going to tell the coach that, hey, coach, here's 10 seconds of me running a 60-meter race or 80-meter race, 100-meter race, and I'm showing you here, here, and here. If you'll notice, at 3 seconds, I've done this, 10 seconds, I've done this. And I think that
they're never going to find that annoying.
They're not complacent.
No.
Yeah.
Like, the coaches are never going to be like, oh my gosh, Mackayla is emailing me again. Like, a coach is going to take a student athlete that is dedicated because they want to win. Their goal is national championship. Whether I don't care if you're a nationally ranked program or not. Like, your goal is to win. A coach would not be doing it if he didn't want to win or she didn't want to win.
Yep.
So, like, if you're going to prove to them that you're going to work your butt off to achieve a national championship or achieve a title or break a record, they're going to be 100% interested in you.
Yeah. I really like the way that you said that, for sure. And I think a lot of people we work with, families and other people that we speak to at fairs and booths and things like that, are like, oh, I feel like I'm communicating too much and bothering the coach too much. And I smile because I'm like, no, that's definitely not the case, because coaches get lots of emails and WhatsApps and stuff all the time. And I was even having a conversation with one of the Cal coaches, and he was saying that at Cal Berkeley, they have a mail room and they get mail from kids that are in grade 7 sending Christmas cards because they can't speak to them yet.
No.
Like neither party can speak to each other. But you best believe there is a grade 7 girl who is like, I want to come play for you. Here's my family Christmas card. It's one-sided, like it's her sending it to the coach, and that's fine. It's not other way around. But they are invested. They're keen. They're probably coming to every game at Cal if they live in the area. And I think that difference, some people don't understand here. But I also think the difference is that when that girl goes from grade 7 to grade 11, she's on that coach's radar that whole time. And that coach might be going and watching them, talking to her club coach, talking to her high school coach, 100%. Keeping track of everything. Yeah.
And like, I think like being over here now, and I don't know if this was just me, but Twitter was not a big thing. I didn't think, like, in Australia, I was like, I had never used Twitter. I was like, what is Twitter? Like, I really don't even understand what it was back in high school. Like, I had no interest in having it. None of my friends had it. I didn't know anybody that had it. And then I got over here, and there's these 10-year-olds with Twitter posting these videos of them playing their sport. And college coaches alike, like, college coaches can't like it and stuff like that, but like, you know that they're looking at it, like you can see who views it, and Twitter is such a big thing over here. Like, and I got my own Twitter account because I'm like, if it's gonna help me get recruited, I'm gonna get one. So like, I think that's another thing too. Like, take any opportunity, whether that be calling the school or emailing the coach or sending a Christmas card or getting Twitter. Like, they're never going to get annoyed. They deal with it their whole lives. And if you spark interest, then they're going to follow you.
Yes, agreed. Are there things that you would recommend kids to post that are looking at doing this process? Maybe they have Instagram or Twitter, or you've just inspired them to get Twitter.
Yeah.
Obviously, they can chat with us as well at Study and Play about things that we recommend. But from your perspective, are there things that you would recommend for kids with any sport to post on social media?
So there's things I wish I did. Like, I wish I had like a softball dedicated Instagram page, and I know it sounds cringy. Like, it really does. Like, I used to look at kids like baseballers that are trying to get recruited, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what are these kids doing? Like, a coach is never going to look at that. They look at it. You don't realize, like, when a coach is recruiting you, they go through everything. Like, they want to know everything about you, good and bad. Like, And so I think like having those pages, like Twitter, especially because college coaches use Twitter. Like any coach that I'm interested, any school that I'm interested, I will Google them and I'll find their school and then I'll find their coach's Twitter page. And I think when posting things, don't just make it about you too. Like if your team achieves something, post that too, because coaches want to know that you're a team player. Coaches want to know that you're willing to sacrifice anything for your team, because and even if you're an individual sport, I mean, obviously that's different. Like, but if you're a team sport, like they want to see you as an all-rounder. As an individual, post your stats, post your game highlights, but also post your team stuff. And then like I'd love to repost schools that I'm interested in. So if a school that I'm interested in, I don't know, they win a 3-game series, I'm like, oh my gosh, congratulations, this team, on doing this. Because then the coach is like, oh, okay, she likes us, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Any little thing, it will help you. And whether that be Instagram or Twitter or whatever, I definitely recommend Twitter. I really wish I had started that earlier. Like my roommate, Bella, her mom has been running her Twitter since she was like, I don't even know how young. And the amount of college coaches that follow her, like big schools too. And whether they're interested in her or not, like that's pretty cool. So
yeah. I think that's very insightful for people here. I'm imagining some of the audience listening to this going, wow, that sounds like a lot of work. So
it is.
but
it's worth it.
It's worth it. And things that are really great in life require hard work and effort
100%.
and just extra stuff that you got to do on a weekly basis in general. So I think that something that I've noticed is that we work with a wide range of families and kids, and some kids are like willing to do whatever it takes to get recruited. Others are quite chill, which is totally fine. And then what can sometimes happen is they're chill throughout the recruiting process. They're not really too proactive with anything, or not really adding extra footage, or potentially blaming other coaches in Australia saying, oh, they were not available to get my footage, or they were not free to do this for me. So then sometimes the kids that are a bit relaxed get to the end and go, oh, I don't have very many offers. But then my thought process is, yes, because
you didn't put
frankly, you didn't put in the effort here. Maybe you'll get over there and absolutely crush it and then transfer like you were hoping to do. Or you realize, oh, this is actually so much more work than I thought, and then you just give up.
Mm-hmm.
So
and it definitely is a lot of work. Like I probably wasn't the most proactive in my initial phases of recruiting. Like I was kind of just like, it'll happen. Like if it happens, it happens, kind of thing. And that's probably another thing. Like I was disappointed. Now looking back, like I'm disappointed in myself, because if I had worked a lot harder, then things may or may not have been different. I'll never know, I guess. But it makes me realize now, like how much more I want to do to get myself recruited. And that doesn't just mean like putting yourself out there. That also means working out more and practicing harder and practicing on your own, like stuff like that. So like I definitely think that's a big thing. If you're not going to work hard, then the coach isn't going to work hard for you.
Yeah, agreed.
Like we spoke about before, like this is their job. This is their life. They want people that are going to win. Because if they're not a winning program, then the chances are that coach is not going to be there for very long. And the higher the division, the more likely that is. Like if a coach is losing, like that school's not going to want them there anymore. So they're not going to recruit somebody that they know is not going to work hard.
And what I also want to add with that is that anyone that works with a recruiting agency, we are working really hard for you as a student as well. But again, there's only so much we can do, because I can't go out and pretend to be you and film stuff.
Yes.
And I can't go work out and gain 3 kilos of leg muscle. Like I can't do that for someone. If I could, I would. Like I love this whole thing, and I love how the recruiting process works, but I know it can also be quite confronting for people, or quite brutal sometimes, with the feedback that is given to study and play to then pass along to a student athlete, or opposite, where a coach straight up is just like, no. So I think to kind of finish off the podcast, what would you say to someone who's currently right now in the recruiting process and is maybe getting ghosted or is not having a lot of interest from coaches, or study and play is following up a lot and they're still like the coaches are just either have said no or have said check back in with me and then they've said no again? What are your pieces of advice for anyone listening who's in the coach contact phase and is feeling a little bit discouraged?
I think don't give up. And there was a point in time where I was getting no interest, and I was like that. I was so disheartened by it. I was like, oh my gosh, nobody wants me. What if this is my dream and I don't get to achieve it because nobody's interested? There will be somebody, eventually, and I know it sounds hard, but you have to wait it out and you have to see. And if you have to take an offer that maybe wasn't really your hopes and dreams, then take that offer, go there, work hard, and get the offer that you want. There's so many. You don't have to stay at a school. There's the transfer portal now. It's so easy to get to where you want to be or achieve your dreams. You just have to be patient, I think. And patience is very hard when it comes to something so important as college and so exciting as college. But it's life, unfortunately. And if a school's not giving you interest that you thought you were going to get interest from, don't get upset about it. It happens, I guess. And yeah, I'm like I said, I went through it and it was very hard. My parents were so hard on me. They were like, why aren't you getting interest? You're not working hard enough. And I'm like, but I don't know what else to do. It's not on me anymore.
Yeah.
There's only so much I can do before it's up to the coaches to be interested in me. And I think no matter what, somebody's always going to be interested. I think whether it is what you want or it isn't, see how it goes and then work hard. And if you want it bad enough, you're going to work hard enough to get to where you want to be.
Great wisdom. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you, as always. And I can't wait for people to hear about what you have to say. And I really hope it's insightful for everyone. And it's, been an absolute joy. And so many times throughout this, I've been like, yes, love it. Very, very excited for everyone to listen. And thank you so much, Mackayla.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved it.